Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Know Your Charity here on Ramadan TV channel 346 on DSTV. We just have a few days left before the blessed month of Ramadan does end. So we encourage all our viewers to make the most of this month and whatever days is remaining. Well, today on Know Your Charity, we are discussing SANZAF, the South African National Zakah Fund. It's a well-known organization that has been in South Africa for many, many years. And with me, I'd like to welcome Yasmina Frank, the CEO of SANZAF, to give a history and some of the current projects, and of course, touching on governance with regards to non-governmental organizations and non-profit organizations. Sister Yasmina, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah so much for joining us.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for having me on your show. I'm very happy and pleased to be part of the Ramadan TV program for this month.
No, it's an absolute pleasure having you. Sister Yasmina, let's give a brief history of SANZAF. I know there's a long, rich history of them, but just an idea of how it started and how it has developed over the years.
Yes, alhamdulillah. So SANZAF is one of the longest serving Zakah institutions in South Africa. And, the conceptualization of the institution of Zakah, I think can be accredited in South Africa, can be accredited to our founding members, and specifically headed up by Dr. Shaukat Ali Token, who was a dedicated member of the Muslim youth movement back in the 1970s. And his preoccupation with the establishment of a Zakah institution to serve the poor in a structured and in an organized manner, as well as a means, to sensitize the South African Muslim communities of the benefit and the importance of Zakah, that resulted in the formation of a National Zakah Fund in 1974, but that was in the northern regions of the country, and eventually an office was set up in Durban. But simultaneously in the Western Cape, when the Group Areas Act broke down many communities and scattered them across, the Cape Flats, the Muslim community was impacted, which resulted in many socioeconomic challenges, such as unemployment, people living far from their place of your work. We also saw that time also the starts of and the beginnings of drug trade, gangsterism, and many social ills became rampant in our communities. And at this time, somebody who's also very well known as a member of the South African National Zakah Fund, Sheikh Faik Hamildin, he returned home from studying abroad and viewed the context of Zakah as wanting in South Africa. So he had taken insights from the way Zakah is managed in countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. And he looked at the South African scenario and he found that there weren't very many talks on Zakah and highlighting the importance of this particular pillar of Islam. And, the distribution of Zakah at that time in Cape Town mostly took place on the 10th of Muharram. And there were no formal Zakah institutions that collected and distributed Zakah. So the distribution was done not in a very organized manner. And he questioned whether due care was exercised to ensure that the eligibility of the beneficiary. And also there was lots of duplications with, individuals distributing probably to similar communities as well. And this led to the establishment of a Zakah committee at the Bridgetown Masjid, which is in Athlone, where Sheikh Faik also served as the Imam. And then a chance meeting happened between Sheikh Faik and Dr. Shaukat Ali Token. Dr. Token came to Cape Town and he delivered a talk at Cravendale Masjid, which is in the northern suburbs in Cape Town. And obviously he spoke about his passion topic of Zakah. And Sheikh Faik was in the audience, and obviously the two found common ground, and eventually the South African National Zakah Fund was established, which was the coming together of the northern structure and the structure here in Cape Town. And so a formalization meeting was held in Rustenburg, and alhamdulillah, the organization has only grown from there. And today we have 29 offices countrywide, with our main centers being in Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, Pietermaritzburg, PE East London, Kimberley, and Ladysmith. So alhamdulillah, our footprint is a national footprint. And alhamdulillah, we have in excess of 100 staff members to serve the many who come into our offices, and also able to go out and initiate and deliver on projects and programs. So that's a little bit about our history.
Sister Yasmina, you know what's interesting, and you mentioned structure, because structure is very important. Because it's one thing handing out zakah, but if there's a structure in order to make sure that when the zakah is being handed out and it's been handed out to the right people, it's important, isn't it, to have that due diligence and along with it a structure just to maintain that sort of, I won't say credibility, but in order to make sure that all the due processes are done to have that zakah being handed out to the necessary people.
Absolutely. And I think specifically when you're talking to an institution of zakah, because now there is a responsibility on the institution, because that money is not the institution's money. The institution has taken on an amana. So they are first and foremost responsible to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they are responsible to the donors who have entrusted them with those funds. And often those funds have been collected with a certain campaign or certain appeal in mind. So that kind of responsibility rests with the organization to deliver and distribute on those particular projects and campaigns for which it was collected. So when you talk about structure, just in terms of SANZAF's processes, so we follow a process where a file is opened for every person who comes and approaches SANZAF for assistance. And the reason for that is that we are able to ensure that a proper assessment is made for every individual, and that every person is afforded the equal opportunity to access assistance. We also, sometimes people question the process in the sense that we do ask for documentation to verify the certain issues that is presented to us at that particular interview with the individual, but it's important. I think if you were to go and open up a bank account, or you were to go anywhere to do a formal engagement with an institution, you would be asked to verify certain information. And that's also not just to protect yourself, but to protect the organization as well. And so we follow a similar process. And it is to satisfy that once we make that decision to give the assistance, that we have followed due process. And I think both the Muzaki and the Mustahiq would understand the responsibility on SANZAF to do that. So those are the kinds of structures that we put in place, but we also follow through with home visits and follow-ups in ensuring that, you know, when people's circumstances change, that we are aware of that, and that we also can take the funds and spread it a bit further. So inshallah, you know, channeling it where it is needed most.
Alhamdulillah. Sister Yasmina, before we go to the break, we have to touch on the question of Ramadan, this being, of course, the last few days left before the blessed month does end. What is SANZAF? What are the projects SANZAF are embarking on during this month?
Yes, so we have a tagline to our brand message, which is changing lives through development and relief. So that tells you that our projects are structured along two focus areas, which is development and relief. Now, due to the high levels of poverty and unemployment in our country, and I think that has been exacerbated by the pandemic, there will always be a need for welfare assistance. And here we refer to food relief and also debt relief. But we also take a long-term view in that we believe that the best way to break the cycle of poverty is through empowerment and skills development. Our flagship project is called SEED, which is SANZAF Education, Empowerment and Development Program. And I'm mentioning this because in the month of Ramadan, we focus on both. In that Zakatul Fitr and Fidya allows us to deliver on the food security programs. If I could just mention to you, for this month of Ramadan thus far, we have served over 524,000 home meals, and we've distributed close to 17,000 Ramadan hampers thus far. So that impacts over 500,000 Muslims in South Africa. And we are just about touching the tip of the icebergs. There are many, many more that we need to serve. So we continue our appeals, especially during the last few days, so that we are able to reach more people, and also specifically on the day of Eid, so that no person, no Muslim who has fasted goes wanting on the day of Eid. But also we found this year that some of the funds that we've collected has been able to help us assist disaster relief victims for the flooding in KZN. That has been extremely unique in this month of Ramadan. And we continue to assist the families who have fallen on hard times as well. Also, the zakah that we receive during the month of Ramadan allows us to channel towards the development aspect, which I mentioned under our SEED program. And that, when we talk about SEED, it's a holistic program in that we support early childhood development, we support youth mentorship at junior and secondary school, bursary assistance at tertiary education level, and vocational training at adult learning level. So we touch the entire cycle of the individual's academic and social development with the idea of, providing the means to catch a fish as opposed to just providing the fish. And in that way, we're hoping that the individual catches sufficient fish to serve their own needs, but also to be able to, distribute of the excess fish that they catch that they may not need themselves. And in that way, the mustahiq becomes the muzaki. So the zakah recipient becomes the zakah payer. So that's our focus really much in the month of Ramadan.
No, alhamdulillah. Well, we are going to be coming after the break to continue the conversation with Yasmina Frank. She's the CEO of SANZAF, and just to discuss future projects that they are going to be doing outside of Ramadan, and of course, governance and credibility. To stay tuned to Know Your Charity. We'll be back after the break.